What's up, painting friends? Welcome back to my channel. My name is Stoof, and today we are going to create an acrylic painting of a child building a sandcastle on the beach. I had a request to create a tutorial like this, so good luck following this tutorial. I hope you enjoy this one. We're using acrylic paints today. I have burnt sienna, dioxazine purple, burnt umber, Mars black, magenta, titanium white, phthalo green, phthalo blue, bright aqua green, or like a turquoise blue color. This one is light ultramarine blue. This is raw sienna. If you have like a yellow ochre, that would work as well. This is cadmium yellow medium. This is Naples yellow, and this one is cadmium red light. In addition to my palette, my paints, I also have a cup of water for cleaning off my brushes. I'm using an 8" by 10" canvas panel here. And then for my paint brushes today, we have a few flat tip brushes. Some of them are a little more frayed than others. We have a number 4 brush, a number 8 brush, number 2, a frayed number 4, and 1 liner brush. I'm not sure if I'll need this one, but we've got it there just in case. So these are my brushes. And we also have some paper towels for drying off the brushes after cleaning them. While I have you here, make sure you hit the subscribe button so you don't miss any more of my fun painting tutorials like this one. All right, now let's dive into this tutorial. All right, to get started with this tutorial, I'm gonna dip the brush in the water a little bit, take some of my light ultramarine blue, hint of that bright aqua green, turquoise green color, and we're gonna mix that with some white. And that is just going to go right here. You want to figure out where you want your horizon line to be, where the sky is going to meet the ocean. We could do it typically about 1/3 is where you put it. I'm going to put it a little higher than that, maybe closer to center, just under center, just so I can show you a little bit more in the tutorial for getting the little shadows in the sand divots. I want to have a little bit more sand in here. So that in general is my horizon line. If you want a nice straight horizon line, you can put a piece of tape down and just paint over that tape, and that'll give you that nice straight line. It takes a little bit more time to do that, so I'm gonna skip over that. I just mixed a little more aqua green with my white, and I'm gonna mix a hint of dioxazine purple in there. And we're just gonna start making the sky. Just going back and forth with the brush. Gonna put a hint of Naples yellow in here, and a little hint of magenta as well. That's kind of over on this side where our sunlight source is. Just fading out and blending in with the other colors. You want to work relatively quickly here so your colors can blend. Make sure you're not leaving any white space on the canvas. And then we're gonna have some clouds in here. To get the clouds, we're gonna use our light ultramarine blue with white and a little bit of black and a little bit of that raw sienna color. Hint of the magenta as well. And we're just gonna do these pretty quickly too. Do a little more raw sienna in there. Just kind of push the brush back and forth, kind of gliding over, not putting quite as much pressure on as we did to get that background sky color. But it's still kind of blending in a little. Okay, and then I'm just going to clean that brush off. Wipe it down. Get some white with phthalo blue now. And a little bit of our other blue. little more white, a little bit more of that green. And we're gonna now start at the top and blend down into that little shadowy sky color we made. Going back and forth, getting nice good coverage of paint on the canvas. Pushing the brush pretty firmly into the canvas so it just really gets that color in there, not leaving any white space. You can keep gradually adding a little bit more phthalo blue and a little bit more of that light ultramarine blue. Up here, that's a lot more blue. You can even take just like some straight ultramarine or straight phthalo blue up there. Just blend it in with more white over here. The lighter you press, the softer your transition is going to be, the less obvious your brush strokes are going to be. The harder you press, the more obvious your brush strokes are, so keep that in mind. I'm going to try to find a few more helpful tips and include some of my own videos that are helpful for beginner painters in the description under this video. If you're brand new to painting and you want some tips that are just going to help you understand just like things to look for and how to get started with painting as a new hobby. So I just mixed a little bit more of that white with Naples. Up here is where we have our sun, and it just kind of blends in with these other colors. So I'm just going back and forth here, letting it blend, holding the brush more gently, not pushing as hard over here so it can get a nice soft blend. And if you want to get like more of the sun, circle like the ray of light kind of emanating out from the sun, then you can kind of make your brush strokes follow around that circle. If you use a larger brush here, you might get a little softer blend than what I'm getting. It's looking a little choppy the way that I'm doing that. Okay, there's that, and then I'm just gonna let that sit for a minute. Let it dry a little bit more, and we're going to come back in with some highlights. I actually want to add a few more little shadows for our clouds real quick while I'm here, and that paint is still wet on my palette. Can mix a little bit more of our blue and purple in for these ones over here. And that's basically our sky. We still have to add the highlight for the sun, but we're going to do that, and the highlights on the clouds. We're going to do that after this layer dries. So while we're letting that sit, we're going to move down to the nice contact between sky and water. And right before I do that though, I want to just add one more little highlight here where just make it a little bit lighter with just some white kind of going over and blending up into that other color at the very bottom of the sky. All right, that looks good. And then for our water, we're going to take phthalo blue with phthalo green and purple, and some umber and some of that bright aqua green color. And let's do a little Naples, a little bit of light ultramarine, and then a little more white. That looks pretty good. And now we're going to get our nice straight line back. I'm looking at this a little bit from an angle, so if my line turns out a little crooked, that is the reason why. And the trick here is just to get a nice, smooth, solid line. You have to be patient. If you want to do it the easy way, you could do the tape method where you put that tape down and just paint over the tape. Just make sure that your sky is totally dry if you're going to try putting tape down again, or it will pull up your paint. You definitely don't want that. Then I'm going to mix some more white with that other color and some magenta, more naples, a lot more naples, and that's going to be our color over here where the sun is reflecting on the water. Take some more white, just go back and forth right here. Let that blend in. We're going to take a little more phthalo green with some of our raw sienna. Blend this in a little. Water gets a little bit more green, closer to the foreground. And we can mix in a little bit magenta with our phthalo green too. A little more purple, brown. A little more phthalo green. Let's get some little shadows in there. Then we're going to get some white with our light ultramarine blue, a little bit of magenta, a little bit of phthalo, and a little bit of black, and we'll just put a little more black. And we're going to put some shadowy section there for like where the waves are in shadow. Then I'm just going to take some pure white with a little bit of naples. Put this over here. Let that blend up. Just getting a nice soft transition for now. We'll go back in with a little more detail later. A little bit more white here. Okay, and then we can get to the sand. So for the sand, we're going to take a lot of our Naples yellow and our raw sienna and some magenta, some purple, and some light ultramarine blue, and some white. And just blend that together. That gives us a nice neutral sand color. And I'm just going to take this color and cover up the whole bottom here. One nice solid color for now, covering the whole bottom. You can achieve this more quickly if you use a larger brush. You can add a little bit more brown in there too when you get closer to the foreground. And we're just going to let this get all covered up and then sit and dry while we go back to the sky. Okay, there we go. Now we're going to put that brush in the water. I'm going to switch to my frayed number 4 brush, and we're going to use that for putting in the sun. So I'm going to mix some white with a little dab of my yellow. It's a tiny little dab and a teeny tiny dab of my pigmented red there. Okay, and then we're just going to take this brush, and it has to be frayed like this. It helps if the brush is frayed to get this desired look. And then you're going to put some paint down. Make sure it's not too much. You don't want to have like texture. And then once you get some of that down, take your brush, put it on your napkin and get all the extra paint off. And then while the paint is still wet, come back to your painting and just dry brush. Just go back and forth with your dry brush, and we're blending this color out. All around it. And then we're going to take some white, just a little yellow, put that inside even more, take the extra paint off, dry brush that out, and we're just dry brushing this out now. Very, very gently pressing. We're going to let that sit and layer that up some more later. We're going to take some more white and just layer this up here on the clouds. Start to add some highlights over the spots where you had shadows. Pushing the paint around, getting some highlights in here. Gonna layer up a little more white on these clouds, just making it a little bit more opaque, using a little bit thicker paint. Then we can go back down to the ocean, put our highlights back there, use that light color. Just going back and forth very gently, getting a little look of highlights on the water. You almost can't see where the horizon line is because it's so light over here. If you use your liner brush, you can get some more detailed little lines. Just look like light reflecting. Can mix a little bit more of that turquoise green color. Maybe a little bit of yellow in there. You want some highlights over here. Mix in a little bit of phthalo green with your sienna. over here. And then if you want more of your dark ocean ripple colors, you can mix purple with your black in the blue area, so it's right here. This will give you some more deep shadows in there. Just taking the brush and adding these little lines in. And you want your lines farther in the distance to be closer together, and your lines that are in the foreground or closer to the shoreline to be thicker and a little bit farther apart. That's going to help to set your sense of distance and depth. Going back to my light color here, fix my highlight there. Let's see, for our shadows in here, we'll mix a little bit of magenta in there. All right, looks good. Back to our nice light color. Gonna take a little bit more white with a hint of my yellow and work on layering this back up here. Mixing our lighter color back in there. Okay, and then we're going to take some purple with our raw sienna and black. Definitely need more black. Hint of our red in there too. I'm actually going to switch to my liner brush and some umber. Just mix a little bit of blue in there too. This is our shadow color under the waves. You don't want this to be like a perfect straight line. You want to have little ripples and get thinner and thicker in some spots. All right, there's that. And then we can start to add some shadows in the sand. So for that, we're gonna mix some purple in with our raw sienna and umber. More purple, a little bit of that light ultramarine blue color as well. And that's going to be, let's do a little bit of phthalo blue too. Yeah, it looks good. And then we can start to add our little divots. So the shape's just kind of like little crescents, little ovals with, sharper edges. And some of them are closer than others together. Some have a little more space. And you can mix up the color a little bit. You don't want to have the exact same color everywhere. I gotta figure out where I'm gonna put my sandcastle. I think I'm gonna put my sandcastle right here. So I'm just gonna add the shape there. Gonna mix a little more purple in there, a little more ultramarine. Just making it a little darker in this one section, farthest away from where the light source is. We can even add a little highlight on part of this sandcastle with some naples. Just like this. Like the sun's reaching it on this one little side here. And we can add more of this Naples color anywhere we want to have a little highlight. So our highlights are mostly going to be on top of the divots. You can add a few more kind of just hanging out in the random parts of the sand. You might want to have a little bit of wet sand here, so we can add that, just a little bit more magenta and purple with your sand color, and that'll give you the wet sand look. Even a little bit of blue. A little bit of brown. I'm going to go back to I'm going to go to this number 2 brush. I'm going to re-add my little shadow. Then we can add another shadow from the sandcastle here. If our sun's here, then our shadow is going to be something like this. And then we can add more of our divots with our purple and our sienna. I'm gonna switch back to my number 4 brush. Just add a few more. They're going to be a little bit deeper, darker, closer to the foreground, so you can mix a little bit more black, maybe a hint more ultramarine blue into these ones right by the foreground. Alright, now we're going to take some white with Naples yellow and add some highlights. Remember that we don't have a lot of divots like right by the water because the tide washes them away. And we're just taking the brush, adding our highlights over the divot areas. If you want to take a lot of time with this and go into a lot of detail, you can make this look very realistic. I'm just trying to show you guys the basics of like light and value and color for these shapes. And then if you want to go back in with a little liner brush and really refine all of the edges on these little divots and highlights, then that can help the sand to look a lot more realistic, if that's the look you're going for. I'm taking the brush and just going back and forth, kind of lightly pressing over some of these divots farther in the distance. And some closer to the foreground. Can go in with just brown here, add a couple more little spots where maybe you've got a little bit grainier look. Can mix more ultramarine in there with your brown, get a little bit of shadows in there. Add a little bit of that ultramarine in some of your little divots. It's just a trial and error process. Just keep going back and forth with it until you're happy with the result. Include a little more purple in your divots if you want. A little more brown and ultramarine. Some of these ones up here looking pretty dark. And you can just take your brush and like add some little dabs for spots where it might be a little more grainy, or you have concentration of some little shadows. And then that helps it to look more realistic. cleaning off the brush really good. And then I need to get a few more shadows in the water. So I'm gonna mix my purple with my phthalo and some black and some white. A little bit of that turquoise. A little more magenta too, I think. Just like a more neutral bluish color here. I think I want a little bit more pink in my sienna too. And we can just add all these little ripples and marks. Just use some yellow right here. A little bit more of my green in there. A little more brown. And some white. Building up those highlights again from the sun on the water. It's just white with a little bit of Naples in there. Loading on the texture a little more. Kind of being messy with it and scribbling around my pure white highlight. Getting a little bit of my phthalo green with my raw sienna. Just adding a little wave in here, a couple little waves. Then we can add our Naples with phthalo and white for a little highlight on this area. And just going back and forth now, kind of letting it blend in. Add a little more white in here. Yeah, I think that gives you the basic idea of what the water should look like. Can mix a little more blue and gray. Just get a few more little subtle shadows in here. And then the last thing I want to do is add a person to this. So if you don't want to add any figures and you think that looks done, then ta-da, there you go. But if you would like to add a little kid then we can do that. So next, this is definitely the trickiest part, is adding a human figure, because how big you make that figure is going to set the whole scale of this. So like right now, I'm envisioning this being like 1 foot tall. So depending on how big I put the kid, it's going to, you know, set the scale for this whole thing. So I'm going to start with just like a sketch using some umber and mixing a little bit of phthalo blue in there as well. And we're going to put this kid's head, I'm going to put him right here. Just give them, and we're going to make it kind of like, you can't tell if it's a boy or girl type of thing, so it can work for anybody. Got a little face there. We're just gonna add a bucket, like they're holding a bucket to make another one a little farther down. It's gonna have a little lip. And then, let's see, there's the neck. Got some sleeves on the shirt. Got a little arm here, about this angle. And then we've got an elbow. And then we've got a hand. And we'll just have the shirt kind of come like that. I want this arm to be a little smaller. And shirt. They're like bending over to make another one back behind this one. This angle's a little more like that. And then we've got some knees. Okay, so here's where we got a little bit of a problem. This sandcastle is a little too big now, so that's gonna be easier for me to fix the sandcastle than the child, so that's what we're gonna do next, is make the sandcastle a little smaller. But we've got the little boy or girl in here. I got the basic shape in there. Now I'm just going to take some blue and black with some purple. I'm going to give some pants on the kid. And for the shirt, I can do like a white with some red. We'll do that where the sun is on it. And then the rest of the shirt's gonna be like in shadow. So we need purple blue, red, magenta, more magenta, and red. It's probably a little too dark. Here we go. Yeah, let that blend a little. Take a little more purple. It's gonna make their shirt even darker. Right there. Can add some little highlights in the shadowy part, around the neck and the sleeve. And some shadows in the shadow, deeper shadows. Red and black. And we'll take some black with our purple. Got like a deep shadow here. The sleeve hole and a deep shadow right here under the neck hole. Okay, and then for the skin color, we're going to take our red with our raw sienna and some purple. And let's actually add some white to that. It's getting awfully close to the color of the sand, and I don't want to do that. Take a little more magenta. That's better. Okay. Got their little arm locked in. Can put another little shadow on the shoulder blade and at the elbow. A little bit brown and magenta, you can get a nice shadow color there. And we're going to take some of my phthalo blue and that turquoise blue, and we're going to fill in the bucket color. Just some pure phthalo for part under his hands. And then we need pure phthalo for inside the bucket too. It's darker. Maybe a little black. I'm gonna do the hair real quick. Just gonna do brown. Oh. Add a little more red where the hands are. And we want that to be more in shadow. There. Let this blend. A little more pink or magenta color. Okay, then for the face, just gonna block that in. A little more magenta right here for the neck part. And then for the legs, we'll get those going. A little bit more red. Then we'll get back to our naples with white. Fix the sand right around him where I added those sketch marks. Gonna need some white with a little bit of blue for the rim of the bucket. And mix a little bit more of that phthalo blue with my turquoise color. Going back to the hair, just gonna add a couple locks of hair in the face so we can't really tell what we're looking at. And do another little shadow right here. Touching up the water. Just touching up the back of the shirt again. Then we'll just add some deep little shadows right around there. Okay, and then some highlights for the hair. Just getting some white with the sienna. And then we could take some light ultramarine with a little purple. Get a few locks here. And a little more brown. Might just change the shape of this castle to kind of fit with this bucket size. Might just make it look like we've got a big castle on the top. So we'll put that castle right here. Mixing our sienna and purple. And then this will look like it fits the size of that bucket. That's what we had to do. Then we'll just put those ones here. Put some little things there. Make it a little bit. Bigger there too. Then we'll go in with our naples with white. Just add a little more of our highlights there. And then we can add our another little round of highlights in the shadow. So mixing our umber with our light ultramarine blue. Still get some little highlights in here. A little bit of purple too. And then again, remember our deepest shadow part of the castle is going to be farther away from the sun. So we gotta put that in there. I'm just going to take a little more of my raw sienna color, just touch up a little bit of this castle, add a little bit more of that burnt sienna, or raw sienna, all in the sand, just to add another little bit of dimension with the by adding more colors. You can put it like right in between your highlight and your divot. Alright guys, we're going to call that a finished painting. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. If you have recommendations for future painting tutorials, you can leave a comment under this video and I will add it to my list of things to paint. Thanks for watching, have a great day, and happy painting! Bye bye!